The massive view screen flickered to life in the United Nations General Assembly Hall. Every person in the room held their breath. This was the moment humanity had waited for since they first looked up at the stars and wondered if they were alone. First contact with the Galactic Council was about to begin. Ambassador Frank Bennett straightened his blue tie and squared his shoulders. At 53, with streaks of gray in his dark hair, he carried the weight of humanity on his back today. The screen finally stabilized, showing a semicircle of alien beings seated in a grand chamber of white stone and gleaming metal. Representatives of Earth, rumbled a deep voice from the central figure, an 8-limbed creature with blue-green skin and multiple eyes that blinked in different patterns. I am High Imperator Zux of the Voxthari, current head of the Galactic Council. Frank nodded respectfully. High Imperator, esteemed council members. I am Ambassador Frank Bennett of Earth. We are honored to establish formal relations with the 17 species of the Council. The translation systems worked perfectly, but something about the aliens' posture changed. Several leaned back. Others made sounds that the translators didn't catch. You come seeking membership, do you not? Asked a thin, bird-like alien to the right of the Imperator. That is correct. Earth has prepared all required documentation to begin the process. The Imperator's mouth parts clicked together. How charming. The little ones think they're ready. Frank felt his face grow hot, but kept his expression neutral. I'm sorry, Ambassador Bennett, said the Imperator, not sounding sorry at all. Your species has barely mastered basic space travel. You still fight among yourselves over resources. Many of your people still believe in supernatural explanations for natural phenomena. You are, by our measurements, underdeveloped primitives. Murmurs of agreement came from around the alien council table. One small purple creature with 6 eyes actually laughed, a bubbling sound like water boiling. With respect, Frank said, feeling the eyes of everyone in the UN upon him. Earth has much to offer. Our art, our culture, our unique perspective. Art? Interrupted a crystalline being that sparkled under the chamber lights. We have studied your transmissions. Your art is simplistic. Your culture is violent. Your perspective is limited by your short lifespans and shorter history. Frank stood straighter. We request only the opportunity to prove ourselves worthy of membership. The Council has standards, said the Imperator firmly. Return in a century, or 2, when you've outgrown your childish ways. Until then, we will establish a trade outpost in your system to supervise your development and ensure you don't harm yourselves or others. This meeting is concluded. The screen went black before Frank could respond. The silence in the UN hall lasted 10 seconds. Then everyone started talking at once. Security had to restore order. When Frank finally got to speak again, his voice was steady but tight with anger. Ladies and gentlemen, I won't lie to you. That went as badly as it possibly could have. They see us as ants, not equals. But they've made one critical mistake. They've underestimated human ingenuity when backed into a corner. 3 days later, when the alien delegation arrived on Earth to establish their trade outpost, which everyone knew was really a monitoring station, humanity smiled and bowed and pretended to accept their place. Ambassador Bennett shook 4 of the Imperator's 8 hands for the cameras, then went home and punched a hole in his bedroom wall. They think we're stupid children, he told his wife Ellen that night. They're going to take what they want from our planet and give us trinkets. In return, Ellen, a former Navy pilot with fire in her eyes, just nodded. Then we don't let them. While politicians handled the aliens with fake smiles, something important was happening far below the New Mexico desert. Dr. Lisa Howard wiped sweat from her forehead as she stared at the readings on her computer screen. At 35, she was already legendary in scientific circles for her work in quantum physics. Her underground lab, funded by a special science grant before the aliens arrived, was working on energy solutions for long-distance space travel. This makes no sense, she muttered, pushing her red hair behind her ears. Her assistant, Alan Wade, looked up from his own screen. What's wrong? The particles aren't behaving according to any model we have, Lisa said, typing rapidly. When we fire the quantum beam through the new material, there's a reaction with something else, something invisible. Equipment failure? Alan suggested. Lisa shook her head. No, I've triple-checked. This is real. She pointed to a dark spot in the visual data. Look at this. The beam is interacting with dark matter, not just detecting it, actually manipulating it. Alan's eyes widened. But that's impossible, I know, Lisa finished for him. And yet, here we are. The lab door opened and both scientists turned to see General Peter Cole enter. Tall and serious, Cole headed the military science division and rarely visited labs personally. Dr. Howard, he said without preamble, I need to speak with you privately. Once Alan had left, Cole leaned against a lab table. Tell me about your work, Doctor. All of it. Why the sudden interest? Lisa asked carefully. Because our new alien friends have just informed us that dark matter manipulation is beyond the reach of any species in the galaxy. They've been studying it for thousands of years with no success. His eyes locked with hers. Yet my intelligence officers tell me you've been getting some very interesting results lately. Lisa hesitated, then turned her screen toward the general. It was an accident. We were working on something else entirely when we noticed the reaction. As she explained the discovery, the general's face changed from interest to something like hope. Dr. Howard, he said when she finished, I'd like to talk to you about the future of humanity and why this discovery of yours might just save us all. 2 weeks later, Lisa's lab equipment was packed up and moved to a new facility, deeper underground and guarded by elite soldiers. The project had a new name now, Operation Umbra. And when Lisa looked through the thick glass windows at the test chamber where her discovery was being expanded and refined, she felt a mix of excitement and fear. From across the galaxy, the Galactic Council watched Earth with dismissive amusement, waiting for the primitive humans to accept their place in the hierarchy. They had no idea what was brewing beneath the surface, both literally and figuratively. The game was just beginning. Admiral George Calloway stood at the window of his new office, 1 mile beneath the Pacific Ocean. His weathered face reflected in the thick glass as he watched workers construct massive underwater hangars. At 62, he should have been retired by now. Instead, he led humanity's most important project. The door hissed open behind him. They're ready for you, sir, said his aide. Calloway nodded and straightened his uniform. 6 months had passed since Dr. Howard's discovery, and today would be the first full meeting of Project Umbra's leadership. The conference room held 20 people, the best minds from every nation. Dr. Howard sat near the front, dark circles, under her eyes showing how hard she'd been working. Beside her was Kevin Martinez, a brilliant engineer who had designed spacecraft before the aliens arrived. Ladies and gentlemen, Calloway began, his deep voice filling the room. Everything said here stays here. As far as our alien friends know, we've accepted our place as their backward cousins. He activated a holographic display showing technical diagrams. Dr. Howard, please update us on your progress. Lisa stood and took a deep breath. We've moved beyond the initial discovery. We can now reliably manipulate dark matter on a larger scale. She pointed to a swirling pattern in the hologram. We've learned that dark matter exists alongside normal matter, but in a different layer of reality, for lack of a better term. The aliens can detect it but can't interact with it. Kevin Martinez stood next to her. We've designed engines that use this interaction. A ship powered by this technology would be effectively invisible to conventional sensors. It would also move faster than anything in the Council's fleet. How fast? Someone asked. We're still calculating the upper limits, Lisa replied. But based on our tests, very fast indeed. An older woman raised her hand. What about weapons? Calloway nodded. A fair question, Dr. Chen. We're not just building ships to hide, we're building warships. The room grew quiet. Everyone understood what that meant. The Council's ships use energy shields our weapons can't penetrate, Calloway continued. But dark matter weapons would pass right through their defenses. They wouldn't see it coming, and they wouldn't be able to stop it. Are we really talking about going to war? Asked a young scientist. Calloway's face hardened. We're talking about being ready for anything. The Council sees us as resources to be harvested, not equals to be respected. We need to change that perspective. The meeting continued for hours as they discussed plans, problems, and possibilities. By the end, Project Umbra had a clear mission: build a fleet of dark matter warships in complete secrecy. 3 months later, construction began in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Earth's governments publicly announced a mining operation, while secretly building the first prototype ship, the UES Shadow. Kevin worked closely with Lisa to integrate the dark matter engine into the ship's systems. "The power output is incredible," he told her one night as they reviewed test results. "We've solved problems that should have taken decades in just months." Lisa looked troubled. "I never imagined my work would be used for this." "For what? Protecting Earth? For building weapons?" Kevin placed a hand on her shoulder. "We're building a shield, not a sword. The Council needs to know we can defend ourselves." Meanwhile, Major Olivia Carter prepared to test pilot the prototype. At 34, she had flown everything with wings or thrusters. But this was different. "The simulation can only teach you so much," Calloway told her during the final briefing. "This ship operates on principles we're still figuring out." Olivia just smiled. "That's why you picked me, sir. I'm good with figuring things out on the fly." The day of the test flight arrived. The Shadow hung in space near Jupiter, its dark hull barely visible against the blackness. Inside the cockpit, Olivia ran through final checks. "Shadow to control. All systems nominal. Ready for test sequence." "Roger that, Shadow," came Calloway's voice. "Begin with standard propulsion to clear the dock, then activate the dark matter drive when you reach safe distance." "Understood, Control." The ship moved smoothly away from the construction platform. When it reached the designated point, Olivia took a deep breath and pressed the glowing blue button. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then reality shifted. The stars blurred, and Jupiter suddenly looked tiny. The ship had moved thousands of kilometers in seconds. "Control, this is Shadow," Olivia said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "The drive works. Current position. Holy hell, we're already past Jupiter's orbit." After several more tests, she returned to base. The engineers cheered as she stepped out of the ship. "This ship doesn't just bend the rules of physics," she reported to Calloway. "It rewrites them completely." Back on Earth, the alien presence grew more demanding. Council representatives met with President Diana Ross in the Oval Office. "We require increased shipments of rare minerals," said the Voxthari representative, "and we need samples of your planet's biological diversity." President Ross, a tall woman with short silver hair and sharp eyes, maintained a pleasant smile. "That's quite an increase from our previous arrangement. The Council has determined this is fair compensation for the outdated technology we provide you." Ross nodded politely while seething inside. She had seen the outdated technology, items that had been obsolete in alien society for centuries. But Earth needed time. Later she contacted Calloway on a secure line. "How much longer?" "We need another year, Madam President. The Shadow exceeds expectations, but we need a fleet, not just one ship." "Keep working." "I'll keep smiling at our guests and giving them just enough to stay satisfied." As the call ended, Ross looked at the night sky through her window. Somewhere up there, humanity's future was taking shape. A future very different from what the Galactic Council had planned. The massive shipyard hidden in the asteroid belt buzzed with activity. 3 years had passed since Project Umbra began, and what started as a desperate gamble had grown into humanity's greatest achievement. Commander William Jackson floated through the zero-gravity construction bay, his magnetic boots clicking on and off the metal floor as needed. At 41, with broad shoulders and a calm demeanor, he had been chosen to captain humanity's first dark matter dreadnought, the UES Phantom. "She's beautiful," he said to Kevin Martinez, who floated beside him. The ship stretched before them, larger than anything humans had built before. Its dark hull absorbed light rather than reflected it, making it look like a ship-shaped hole in space. 3 kilometers long, Kevin said with pride, with enough firepower to take on the entire Council Defense Fleet. William nodded. And they still have no idea we're building it? None. The dark matter field hides all our activities here. Their satellites pass right through this area and see nothing but empty rocks. Elsewhere in the shipyard, 5 sister ships took shape. The UES Spectre, Wraith, Ghost, Revenant, and Shade. Each represented thousands of hours of work and the combined genius of Earth's best minds. In a small office overlooking the construction bay, Admiral Calloway met with Nicole, Diaz, Earth's top intelligence officer. At 36, Nicole had managed to infiltrate the Council's Earth embassy by posing as a human collaborator, eager to help the aliens. "You look tired," Calloway said, pouring her a cup of coffee. Nicole took it gratefully. "Hard to sleep when you're playing nice with people who see you as walking resources." She pulled out a small data device. "But it was worth it. I got their plans for Mars." Calloway's eyes narrowed as he reviewed the files. "They're not even trying to hide it anymore. This isn't a trade outpost, it's a military base. They call it a supervisory installation. According to these files, Earth is officially listed as Resource Acquisition Zone 117. We're just another planet to them, Admiral. One they plan to drain dry." Calloway's fist tightened. "How long? Until they begin construction?" 2 months. They're bringing materials from their nearest outpost now. Then we need to accelerate our timeline." He opened a secure channel to the fleet commanders. Everyone to the war room. Now, the meeting was tense. Project leaders from all 6 ships gathered around a large holographic display showing the solar system. "The Council plans to establish a permanent military presence on Mars," Calloway explained. "Once that happens, our window closes." Dr. Howard shook her head. "The ships need more testing. The dark matter drives are stable, but the weapons systems will have to be tested in real conditions," Calloway interrupted. "We're out of time." Commander Jackson studied the Mars plans. "Even with their base, they can't detect our ships. We still have the element of surprise, but for how long?" asked Captain Eliza Reed of the UES Spectre. "Once we reveal ourselves, we lose our biggest advantage." Major Carter, now commander of the UES Wraith, leaned forward. "Then we make the reveal count." A plan began to form. President Ross would request a special session of the full Galactic Council, supposedly to discuss the Mars base. Meanwhile, the fleet would prepare for its first and possibly last mission. As the meeting ended, William pulled Nicole aside. "What do you think our chances are?" She gave him a tired smile. "Better than they were 3 years ago when they laughed in our faces." Training intensified as the deadline approached. Crews worked around the clock to prepare the ships. William drilled his people mercilessly, knowing their lives would depend on perfect execution. One evening, he found Dr. Howard working late in her lab aboard the Phantom. "You should get some rest," he said. She looked up from her equations. "So should you, Commander." "Fair point." He sat across from her. "Do you ever wonder if we're doing the right thing, preparing for war instead of finding peaceful solutions?" Lisa sighed. "Every day. But I've read every communication between Earth and the Council. They don't want peace. They want submission. Sometimes you have to fight to create the conditions where true peace is possible." William nodded slowly. "Let's hope we live to see those conditions." 1 week before the mission, President Ross addressed the United Nations. Her speech was broadcast worldwide, but its true audience was much smaller, the men and women of Project Umbra. "For 3 years we have smiled and bowed to those who see us as lesser beings," she said, her voice strong and clear. "We have traded away our resources for trinkets. We have accepted disrespect with grace. Some have called this weakness. I call it strategy." Around the world, people listened in confusion. In the asteroid belt, the fleet crews understood perfectly. "The time for such strategy is ending," Ross continued. "Soon, humanity will take its rightful place among the stars, not as servants but as equals, not as children, but as adults with our own destiny." The council representatives in the audience shifted uncomfortably, not understanding the change in tone, but sensing something was different. That night, final preparations were made. The 6 dark matter warships powered up their engines and moved into position behind Earth's moon, invisible to the Council's monitoring systems. On the bridge of the Phantom, William took his captain's chair and looked at his crew, humans from every nation, united in purpose. "Send the message to all ships," he ordered. "Operation Rising Shadow is a go." As Earth's diplomatic shuttle launched toward Centaurus Prime for the special council session, it was secretly followed by humanity's new fleet. The Council's scanners showed only the small shuttle approaching their space station. They had no idea that the largest armada humans had ever built traveled silently behind it, weapons primed and crews ready. The trap was set. Humanity was about to change the balance of power forever. The Galactic Council space station hung like a jewel against the blackness of space. Its curved arms extended from a central hub, housing representatives from 17 species that ruled the galaxy. Inside the grand chamber, delegates lounged, in specially designed seats, their various body types accommodated by adaptive technology. The Voxthari Imperator, now named Zuxkalan after a recent molting, clicked his mandibles in boredom. His blue-green skin glistened under the soft lights as he addressed the gathered representatives. "The humans have requested this special session to discuss our Mars initiative," he said dismissively. "No doubt to beg for better terms. Let us hear them and be done with it. My third stomach requires feeding within the hour." Laughter rippled through the chamber. The alien representative, a bird-like being named Thrix, ruffled her feathers. "Perhaps they wish to offer us more of their quaint art as payment. I find their music amusing, like the chirping of unintelligent creatures." More laughter followed. Large screens showed Earth's diplomatic shuttle approaching the docking bay. Council security forces stood ready, though no one expected trouble from the primitive humans. The small shuttle carried only Ambassador Bennett and a minimal crew. What the Council's sensors didn't detect were the 6 massive warships positioned strategically around their station. On the bridge of the UES Phantom, Commander William Jackson gave final orders. "All ships maintain dark matter field integrity. Weapons systems on standby. No one fires unless I give the command." "Sir," his communications officer said, "Ambassador Bennett has docked. He's being escorted to the Council chamber now." William nodded. "Start the countdown. When it reaches 0, we drop the fields and become visible." Throughout the human fleet, crews stood at their stations, hearts pounding. This moment would determine humanity's future. Inside the council chamber, Frank Bennett walked calmly to the speaker's podium. 3 years had changed the ambassador. His hair was grayer, his eyes harder, but his back was straight and his step confident. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council," he began, his voice steady. "I thank you for granting this special session." Yes, interrupted the Imperator. "You wish to discuss our Mars base. Let me save you time. The decision is final. Construction begins next month. We require your planet's cooperation in providing raw materials and labor." Frank smiled slightly. "Actually, I'm here to discuss a change in the relationship between Earth and the Council." The Trilaxian diplomat, a gelatinous being who communicated through color changes in his translucent skin, rippled with amusement. "There is no change to discuss. You are a resource world. We are the Council. That is the relationship." Frank checked his watch. The countdown was nearly complete. 3 years ago, he said, you denied our application for Council membership. You called us underdeveloped primitives. You laughed at us. And? Asked the Imperator, impatience clear in his voice. Frank looked each council member in the eyes, or whatever they used for seeing. "And you made a terrible mistake." At that moment, alarms blared throughout the station. The main view screen flickered as council operators frantically worked their controls. "Imperator," called a security officer. "6 unknown vessels have appeared around the station." "Impossible." The Imperator rose to his full height. "Our sensors would have detected approaching ships." The view screen changed to show the UES Phantom, massive and dark, hanging in space outside the main viewport. 5 more ships materialized around the station, weapons aimed at critical systems. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted questions and demands. Security forces rushed in, weapons drawn, but Frank Bennett remained calm at the podium. "What is the meaning of this provocation?" the Imperator demanded, mandibles clicking rapidly in anger. Frank kept his voice level. "This isn't a provocation, it's a negotiation. One between equals." He gestured to the screen showing the human fleet. "Allow me to introduce the United Earth ships Phantom, Spectre, Wraith, Ghost, Revenant, and Shade." The alien representative's feathers flattened against her body, a sign of fear in her species. "Our sensors detected nothing. How is this possible?" "That's rather the point," Frank replied. "What you see before you is merely the first wave of humanity's fleet. We've spent the last 3 years building what you thought was beyond our capabilities." A new voice came through the chamber's communication system, deep, confident, and unmistakably human. "This is Commander William Jackson of the UES Phantom. We have weapons lock on all critical systems of this station. We await further instructions." For the first time in recorded history, the Galactic Council chamber fell completely silent. The Imperator recovered first. "You dare threaten the Council? Our combined fleets will reduce your planet to ash." Frank shook his head. "Your fleets would have to find our planet first. The same technology that made our ships invisible to your sensors can hide Earth itself if necessary. But we don't want war." "What do you want?" asked the Trilaxian, his skin now pale with anxiety. "What we've always wanted. A place at the table, fair treatment, respect." The Imperator's multiple eyes narrowed. "And if we refuse?" In answer, Frank nodded to William through the communication link. Outside, the Phantom fired a single dark matter weapon. The beam passed through the station's shields as if they didn't exist and sliced cleanly through an uninhabited maintenance arm of the station. The section floated away, perfectly cut. Panic filled the room again as representatives realized their defenses meant nothing against this new weapon. "That was a demonstration," Frank said when the noise died down. "Commander Jackson could have targeted this chamber instead. The next shot will not be a demonstration if you refuse to negotiate." The Imperator sank slowly back into his seat. "This is unprecedented," he said, his voice quieter. "No species has ever achieved what you claim." "Perhaps you shouldn't have underestimated us," Frank replied. "Now shall we begin actual diplomacy as equals?" The council members looked at each other, then back at the human ships visible on their screens. After a moment, the Imperator nodded. "We will hear your terms, Ambassador Bennett." Frank smiled. "Thank you, Imperator. I believe this is the beginning of a much more productive relationship." The next 24 hours changed the history of the galaxy. In a conference room adjacent to the council chamber, negotiations continued through the night. Admiral Calloway arrived to join Ambassador Bennett, while the UES Phantom maintained its position outside, a constant reminder of Earth's new power. "These terms are outrageous," the Imperator said, pushing away the data tablet Bennett had presented. "These terms are fair," Admiral Calloway corrected. His uniform was crisp, his gray hair neatly trimmed. "Full council membership. Access to the same technology other members share. Fair trade agreements. Recognition of Earth's sovereignty over our solar system." Dr. Howard, who had come aboard to explain the dark matter technology, looked around the table at the alien representatives. "You're not angry because our terms are unfair. You're angry because you now have to treat us as equals." The Trilaxian diplomat's skin rippled with blue patterns of frustration. "You deceived us. You developed this technology in secret while pretending to be primitive." "We adapted," Dr. Howard replied simply. "When denied a seat at the table, we built our own table." The negotiations continued, sometimes heated, sometimes tense, but always moving forward. The council representatives knew they had little choice. The dark matter technology had changed everything. Outside the conference room in a viewing area overlooking space, Commander William Jackson and Major Olivia Carter watched the stars together. "Do you think they'll try something once they figure out our technology?" Olivia asked. William shook his head. "They might want to, but they've learned an important lesson about humans today." "What's that?" "Never corner a species that turns obstacles into opportunities." He gestured toward the stars. This isn't the end of our journey, it's just the beginning. Back on Earth, crowds gathered in cities worldwide to watch the live broadcast from Centaurus Prime. The signing ceremony was held in the Grand Council chamber, with representatives from all 17 species present. President Ross stood tall, as she signed the document that officially made Earth the 18th member of the Galactic Council. The Imperator, humbled but practical, signed next. "Welcome to the Galactic Council," he said formally. "Humanity has certainly earned its place." As the ceremony concluded, a new emblem was added to the Council's Great Seal. Earth's blue and green sphere now stood alongside the 17 other member worlds. 3 weeks later, Admiral Calloway stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Earth Embassy on Centaurus Prime. President Ross joined him, looking out at the busy space lanes where ships from across the galaxy moved like fish in a cosmic sea. "I almost can't believe it," she said. "In a few months, we went from being seen as backward children to respected equals." Calloway smiled slightly. "It wasn't in a few months, Madam President. It was 3 years of hard work, brilliant minds, and incredible sacrifice." "What's next for us?" she asked. "Dr. Howard is already working on the next generation of ships. We're establishing our first colony beyond our solar system next year, and the Council is sending representatives to learn about our dark matter technology, under strict supervision, of course." Ross nodded. "We'll need to be careful. Power can corrupt as easily as weakness can enslave." "That's why you're the president," Calloway said with respect. "You remind us what we're fighting for." As Earth celebrated its new status, the dark matter fleet began its journey home. On the bridge of the Phantom, William gave the order to engage the drive. The stars blurred as the massive ship slipped between the layers of reality, traveling faster than any Council vessel could follow. He thought about what would come next: exploration, discovery, and a future where humans stood proud among the stars. The Galactic Council had learned a valuable lesson. Never underestimate humanity.